All right, good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 7th. This is the rescheduled regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 10th, 2017 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor?
Can I abstain?
All except Burns?
Abstain.
Burns abstention. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 17th, 2017 special meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. There's an opportunity for public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to make comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, move on to reports and discussion. And we have Mr. Boucher with us for the annual interscholastic athletics report.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, pretty much business as usual with the athletic department. We'll start with our state high school athletic association update. We just received our approved beds number. When I had done this, it was 283, but we actually got the approved number is 282. That's what the state is reporting. State Ed is reporting to the State Public High School Athletic Association. 282, 283, that doesn't matter. The next cutoff is 279. So for next year, we will again be a B school for baseball, basketball, softball, and soccer. We'll remain a C school in the sports of cross-country, field hockey, volleyball, and I have football there as well. That is a change. That's our merged program with Pine Plains. With our number dropping and Pine Plains' number dropping, there's a formula, and we go to the C competition for next year, which is actually beneficial for us. We had been playing in the B division, and that was a little bit tough. So next year, we're hoping for a little more success in the men's column. The sport of lacrosse just added a fourth classification, and this year, as we know, we're going to be doing the merged program with Pine Plains, playing at the JV level. So we have a JV schedule in place. We will not be competing in sectionals this year. Where a D this year will be a D next year as well, even if we continue our merger with Pine Plains next year. Changes on the NISPA front, the Scholar Athlete Award. Previously, teams were recognized based upon having a cumulative GPA of 90 or above, and the number of players on each team varied based upon the team. The state association changed that this year. They wanted to get more teams recognized because there were some teams where they thought maybe they were fudging numbers and moving things around. So they came up with a whole new criteria. It's now 75% of your overall roster, and they're also recognizing individual athletes for the first time. So if you see later on, we had this fall our fall varsity teams, boys and girls cross country, field hockey, girls soccer, and girls swimming, recognized as New York State Scholar Athlete teams, and 40 of our varsity athletes are maintaining an average over 90 during their sports season, so they'll be recognized in June at our annual varsity recognition night. This year, we have switched to that new ball, and been a lot of discussion about various different balls, and you wouldn't believe the amount of time that it has taken up.
Why don't you take like 2 minutes to explain?
So
Those of us who've been sitting in these meetings for the last several years know full well what it's involved, but just give the board, if you wouldn't mind.
Our executive director of the State Public High School Athletic Association, one of his goals when he was hired was to have a universal ball throughout the state. So pretty much any section could have any ball at any given time. Only once you hit state level did they have an approved ball, and each sport had their own side contracts with balls, so some sports were getting more money, other sports weren't getting any money, so he was trying to make it fair and equitable for all. So he put out a request for proposals and got back a bid from Spalding for a 5-year deal, and pretty much every section of the state bought into it in exchange for money. So Spalding is giving Section 9 $28,000 every year, which basically comes down to $610 per school within the section. So that money is being used to offset the cost of our dues within the section, so section dues stay flat, which has been beneficial. Now, there's been much discussion about the quality of these balls, and then this fall, they couldn't find the volleyballs anywhere, nobody could get them. We had been proactive and had bought them, we saw this coming, so we had ours, but other schools were scrambling. So now we're starting to see this, come into play this year. You'll notice it with basketball. If you look at our basketball rack, you'll see we have two different balls on the rack because we have a league-approved ball and then we have a section-approved ball. So for league play, we're using Anaconda's rock, and then for section play, we'll be using the Spalding ball. So that's where we're at. But we're getting money. So.
And this is happening at every sport that plays with the ball.
It is, well, yes.
Baseball, softball.
Baseball, softball, soccer,
Soccer.
football, volleyball.
Yeah.
Lacrosse and field hockey, they didn't get into that.
So if our undefeated basketball team doesn't do well in sections, it's because of the ball.
No doubt. There is no doubt about it. That is why we introduced that ball 2 years ago. And they had them for practice so they could start using them. Yeah.
Are there rules about how much they're inflated?
The officials are supposed to check the balls before each game. Yes.
We're not in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so I don't think that applies to us.
So, yeah, that's where we're going with the balls. On the section front, there is a slight increase in dues to the regional office. 2 years ago, when we merged Orange County and Mid-Hal, our dues went down, and then they stayed flat for a year. This year, next year, one of the schools that had come in is leaving, so in order to offset that cost, the dues are going up slightly. It is not much. I had passed that paperwork on the time.
Yeah.
It was a few $100.
Yeah, it's not
It really wasn't anything.
It could just be a small
So everything is good there. Championship-wise, we had a successful fall. Our boys and girls soccer teams won the division, went down and played at FDR, and then the boys went on to the conference championship. In sectionals, our girls advanced to the section finals down in Middletown. So when I was ready to give this on the 24th, our boys basketball team had not yet clinched the division. They have since done that. They are going to play in the MHALs on the 22nd of February against Spackenkill. That time has now been set for 7 o'clock. As always, those schedules are updated on our district website. That was just put on there this morning.
And what's the venue for that game?
Ulster County Community College.
Thank you.
The MHAL championship game is the following day, the 23rd, barring any snow. Academic recognition, as I mentioned before, along with the New York State Scholar Athlete Team Award, we do have 40 individuals that are being recognized as scholar athletes from our fall teams, not only by the state but also by the league. We will have our winter athletes once the grades just went in, so once we get our grade report from the guidance office, we'll be able to do our winter sport teams as well. In terms of the 2017-2018 season, later start time, I am pleased to report, has had no positive or negative impact on the athletic world. It's really only had an impact on me personally, just having to get used to a shorter time to get things ready for teams coming in. So, as we look at that for the future, it really has no positive or negative. Combining the teams, at this point we are combining with Pine Plains for the sport of football and lacrosse. At this point, that's been a positive merger for us. I talk with Joe quite frequently about sports now that we have a lot of support time together. Mergers may be a thing where we're going to have to look as budgets get tighter, as enrollments continue to drop, to keep opportunities for kids. This may be something that we're going to have to continue to do. That being said, one of the things that I forgot to put on here, but I wanted to mention because I mention it every year, We have had a few students along the way throughout the course of the year come to myself or Dr. Davenport and talk about adding new sports. And we have pretty much just been telling them what we have done in the past when we added swimming and boys lacrosse. That, we're looking for an interest survey, we want to see how many kids are involved, and then traditionally it's been at a zero cost. I'm just curious if that's the guidance that we should be going with, if that's where we're at still. I mean, I know budgets haven't gotten necessarily better.
Right now, just to let everybody know, we've absorbed all these teams into it. We do not bill out to any of those organizations as they did when they began, but we added thousands of dollars, tens, 5,000 each year, and I think it got to like 10,000. So we take care of all the sports as far as that's concerned, so.
They were startup costs for the first several years.
We don't bill out to lacrosse or swimming anymore because they're fully absorbed now into our budget.
But it's certainly true, as you're referencing, that all the new sports
That's how they began.
did become, initially, they
Right.
had a booster club that helped support it. So, I mean, it seems like it would be fair to give historical information.
Right, and that's, yeah. So if we see that this becomes, there's a huge groundswell, we'll come to you with the information.
Okay.
I mean, I would, unless the board would like to contradict me here, and they can feel free to do so, I would say maintain the status quo until such time as the board might be inclined to take a different direction on that, unless 6 or 7 of them want to jump up right now and say, no, we'll add them without that protocol. I would stay with that protocol, but we'll, of course, keep the board informed if any such interest arises. If they wish to change their approach, then that's up to them. It's not codified in board policy anyplace, so it's really more of the process we've used. And I think it's at least engendered some buy-in on the part of the people who've been interested, and you get to know what kind of student participation and community support you have out there for a new sport.
Diane, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think money's obviously a factor, but, the declining enrollment, is there enough kids for any type of new sport? But, people's interests change, and where a sport that's been here for years and years may not be something kids want anymore. So it's, you always have to be open to the idea of something new.
Right.
But I'm curious, we've talked about with the declining enrollment, and we're doing more of these mergers, like what your type of philosophy would be, to do as many mergers as possible to get kids to be involved, or, because at some point you can lose your identity as a school if all your teams are merged. I mean, the football program, you hear it as Pine Plains a lot, you don't always hear it as Pine Plains Rhinebeck. So, I'm just wondering, as you go down the line, like, keeping that balance, I guess, and what is right.
And with mergers, that's another
It's a hot topic.
One of the theories when mergers first started was that mergers were meant to get a school established and then eventually develop their own program. I've argued that, for Rhinebeck, as long as I've been here, we've never had a football team. We'll never have enough kids to have a football team. We have a handful of kids that are interested in playing football. So, I don't think we can look at mergers in that manner, because if so, then we might as well just stop with a football merger, because we're never going to have our own program. I think that we do need to be selective in the mergers that we are looking at. Are we merging with the intention of having a large portion of our student body as opposed to one student? The one student mergers are ones that are now being defeated at the section and the league level. They don't want all-star teams being created, and that's what they're seeing. Coaches go around and say, I want you, I want you, I want you. And we've been in the mentality that we're not going to we're a public school, we merge for our entire student body. So I think that we do have to do a lot of research and find out how many kids are interested and go that route.
I would say that Steve and I, in representing our school district on the board of the Mid-Hudson Athletic League and Section 9, have been pretty vocal about our reasons for merging, which is really to save programs. You know, our kids didn't participate in the merged football program. You know, we used to merge with FDR, and then we tried it with Spack and Kill, and Pine Plains was kind of a out of left field last ditch effort. The lacrosse merger, we entered that purely to save that program. Not to expand programs, not to add programs, but to save a program. They had a need, we had a need. I would say that not everybody on that league or section governance board thinks that that's necessarily a good reason for merging. And from our perspective, it's like the only reason for merging is to keep programs for kids, maintain opportunities for kids, not necessarily expand them, but to save them. Yeah. And so that's the philosophy we are taking in, but we have more often than not are fighting a battle when we advocate for that as a reason why, as an entire section or an entire league, more so at the section level, I think, that mergers for that reason should be approved. The idea that it's only to start a program and then after a few years you're on your own, that's not our approach. So we have a little different interest in mergers than a number of other teams do.
Steve, do you know offhand how many kids are participated in football? And then lacrosse is the spring sport, right? So
Yes, football, we had, let's say, 7 kids on varsity, 6 or 7 kids on varsity, and there were 10 kids on modified. So it was a big number again.
And so did we do lacrosse last year with Pine Plains?
We did not.
So this is his first year?
This is the
Okay.
first year.
Do you have an anticipated number, or you're guessing, or?
So myself and Coach Bonanza are heading to Pine Plains next Thursday to do an interest meeting. I've been told by their athletic director they have between 7 and 10 kids that are interested in playing. Now, these are kids that have never had any lacrosse experience, so it's good that we're coming in at the JV level, and hopefully we're going to be able to build those skills up and get back to the varsity soon.
How many Rhinebeck kids do you think are interested?
Well, based upon last year's number, I'm hoping for at least 12. I do know that there are a few kids in the middle school that, with it being JV, could possibly make that jump, as opposed to going from 7th grade to varsity. That's pretty big.
So will they come here?
Pine
Yes.
Plains is coming here for
Okay, so they're coming.
We'll
here.
flip-flop the arrangement that we have had for the last couple of years with football, where we go there for football.
Okay.
They'll come here for lacrosse.
And I apologize to my colleagues if I'm getting too deep into the politics of the sports, but Joe, you're a representative for us at the section level and at the league level, those two
Correct.
separate meetings that
Correct,
happen in the hall.
and as is
Section 9.
Steve, yeah.
Okay. And are other superintendents there? Okay. I'm
They're
just
not the
really,
ma-
I'm stunned, I shouldn't be after all these years, that sports gets so political, but to me, it seems to me so obvious that I didn't realize that this concept of merger as a way to provide opportunities for kids would be at all controversial.
So when I say merging for one kid, the larger schools that could maintain their programs by themselves, they were cherry picking athletes at different schools
And then calling it a merger.
and bringing them in, and there would be a merged program, but it really was not necessarily open to, wasn't well publicized, and there weren't a lot of kids going. It was 1, maybe 2 kids going. And some of the larger schools started to say, wait a minute here, we're not going to let that merger happen. You don't need, if you're a large AA school, you don't need that one kid coming from wherever they're coming to maintain your program. You're just looking to put together an all-star team. So
Right.
they started to decline mergers.
I see.
And then it got really political because, boards of education had approved a merger, so they thought the merger was happening, and then the merger's not happening, so we changed the whole process by which mergers happen now, so it gets approved now at the league, the section levels, before it gets to the board levels, so that those politics don't.
I see.
That's why you remember with lacrosse, we took a kind of a straw poll of the board as to whether we should pursue a lacrosse merger with Pine Plains, and you gave us the thumbs up to pursue it, but it really had to get approved ultimately at the section level. Before then, we came back to the boards and said, okay, now you actually vote it because it's been approved. Because they had those problems. Boards would vote it early, and then it didn't get approved. Then the boards are saying, what's going on? We approved a merger, you guys turned it down. What's that? I mean, it caused friction in a number of school districts.
So having Joe be a representative, he represents the Dutchess County Superintendents. When we did the merger of offices between the Mid-Hal and Orange County, there was more friction there. There were quite a few athletic directors that don't necessarily keep their superintendents in the loop. We're very fortunate, Joe's here, but I'll speak nice about him anyway. Joe is a great supporter of all of our students, but of the athletics, so Joe was always very interested. So Joe and I would talk all the time, so he knew what was going on. When we did this merger, part of that merger was also to add superintendent positions so that the superintendents, so now the theory is Joe goes back to the Dutchess County superintendents and lets them know what's going on. So that we don't get into one of those
Right, okay.
funks again.
Okay.
So at the section level, we have a superintendent from Orange, a superintendent from Sullivan, a superintendent from Ulster and Dutchess.
Okay,
And then on the local level, we have two superintendent reps, one from Ulster, one from Dutchess.
okay. All right, thanks.
So if we're being asked for other sports, what are those sports that kids are asking for?
At this time, there's been a discussion about winter track and possibly competitive cheer. The conversation was cheerleading, and that went to Dr. Davenport, and I said, is that competitive cheer or spirit squad? Because since we've had cheerleading, which I was trying to remember, I think it's been at least 7 years.
Yeah,
It's been a long
quite a
time. New York State has added cheerleading as a sport. But now there's competitive cheer and there's spirit squad. So there's two different.
One's a team and the other's
One's a team,
a club.
one's a club. So, and that conversation that is still going on. That's what has happened so far. I forgot to mention Family ID. Family ID was a change for us this year, and it has been a great change in terms of the paperwork. Just from my end and from Teresa's end in the health office and the school doctor, it has been great. Our coaches really enjoy it as well, because now rather than having a stack of papers, they have, an email that comes every day and it tells them who's cleared, who's not cleared. It gives them all the contact information. I know within the league and the section level, we're actually looking to get our own BOCES COSER to potentially even lower that cost more. So we're hoping to continue it. I don't know where it stands at the district level. There was also talk about maybe, in the past about trying to do more of our forms all online so as to make it, a whole lot easier.
Steve, do you have a lot, do you have parents that are not participating in it or refuse to participate in it?
At
or-
this point, there are two.
And is it like they don't have the ability to do it online, or are they just refusing to do it for other reasons?
Refusing for other reasons at this point. I'm hoping that I can convince. I understand the fear, but they're a reputable company. They haven't had any security breaches. and so, and there's quite a few school districts now in our area that are using it, and more are coming on. The last thing that I have is the Andy Bennett tournament. We're going to keep that on Columbus Day weekend. I think it did great. This year, last second, we got Rhinebeck Soccer League to get involved. They had the young teams up playing. They're going to expand that next year. I was speaking with Roger Quan about that. The PTSO got involved. The PTSO is going to be more involved next year. We're hoping to get more school clubs involved, really try to make it more of like that homecoming event and generate more school spirit. Yes.
Is there a way, what methods do we use? I know in part it could be the Rhinebeck Alumni Association, but methods to communicate to, graduates that this is kind of becoming a homecoming weekend. Or you might want to just think about it, how to advertise, I don't know. Like, we don't have a local paper, which
Yeah.
stinks,
Actually,
honestly.
so like I have always said.
Twitter.
That's, I have
Add it to
the
their
athletic
survey.
Twitter, but
See you at home.
I do send out a press release
Yeah.
to all of whatever is left of the newspaper at this point.
Right.
The week prior to, and just to keep, the reason why we're doing the Andy Bennett or the Maggie O'Malley tournament, just so that they get that word out.
Yeah.
But I think the Alumni Association would be, that
Yeah.
was, I wanted to get involved with the Alumni Association, thinking maybe like, not the senior citizen prom, but like an alumni dance, something, just something where, people get together.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, even if you do tweet about it, both of you, well in advance, so that then word of mouth might pick up. It's a great idea. I mean, just the homecoming thing is great.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just a quick question. You've got your participation numbers here. Is it pretty static from years prior?
Yeah.
About the same?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. The only one I was thinking about was in the spring, the JV. So this is last year's spring. The JV number was a little bit lower, just because we didn't have enough girls for a JV softball team. Hopeful this year that we will. We've had a few middle school girls express an interest in taking the testing up, and there were some of the kids from last year's modified team which could give us that number.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Appreciate your
Thank you,
time.
Steve. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, move on to principals' reports.
Good evening, everyone. So some things happening at Chancellor. I wanted to start off with our successful initiative this year, CLS Press. Our January issue came out, Roshika, last Monday. Highlights include a review of the movie Sing and an interview with our very own Mrs. Simmons, which is right on top. Interesting little nugget. Next to her picture, I thought that caption was kind of funny because it's true.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? That's exactly what I said there. And I just want to give a little shout out. We have a young man by the name of Ezra Steinman who has been, it wasn't anything, I really think it happened organically. He's become our book reviewer, and every single issue he comes up with one. So this time he did a trilogy of books that he wanted people to be aware of. We try to include book covers as well. But I just want a little shout out. He does a really good job. He gets it in before anyone. It's like I'm never asking any of these kids for any of it, by the way. They get it to me on time. And I wanted to also let you know an initiative that my three head lead journalists put together. We have a box now in the main office that allows students, just to make it easier for other students to submit work. So that's been a success. And we really haven't had any issues. Pretty much any student that wants to be part of it, you know, you have to make some tweaks, things here and there, but it's been a good success. So I just wanted to share that with you. You may remember in the past, we had service dogs, therapy dogs that used to come and work with students, sign up, and it was a pretty regular thing. Unfortunately, we've had some service dogs pass. We had our most recent parent user certification lapsed, unfortunately. So this year we don't have a program, which was very successful. But we were able to bring in some service dogs and therapy dogs to do a presentation with third grade students that aren't really necessarily affiliated with the school yet. But we wanted to make sure that we kind of still kept that going. So last week we had a bunch of different, each of the third grade classes had a chance to meet with them and just got some information on the service and care protocols, things like that. Hopefully we'll be, I talked to Kathy Haskins recently, hopefully we can start to find some new, maybe perhaps these dogs specifically, but they weren't available. But like I said, that program kind of dissolved only for natural reasons. So we're hoping to bring it back, but that's something we were able to do a little touch for third grade students. I wanted to just really thank the RSF and our students from Bard. Science Night Out was mid last month. Great attendance as always. I wanted to thank the Bard students and of course the RSF for supporting and organizing it. I also wanted to thank David Wolfen, who every year he's been here, we've done it. He's opened up the STEM lab and made it available to show off some of the things that he's doing in there. And as you know, Bard science students help kids understand the magic of science through exciting experiments. This year, we had lava lamps, DNA extraction, space-time continuum demonstrations, things like that. It was a great, very well attended. I also wanted to thank the PTSO. This last Thursday, we had our Harlem Wizards event for the second year in a row. It was wonderful. Unfortunately, last year, because of prior engagements, I couldn't make it. This year, I was there. As always, sold out. I kept hearing that this year was even better than last year. We had a lot of whiz kids, groups of students, most from Chancellor. It was really a fundraiser for Chancellor, but there were some middle schoolers there. I know we worked with some of them to get older students some, public service hours. Yes. So they were involved. I don't know what the total was for the evening. I haven't gotten that information yet, but very well attended. So hopefully we did well for raising money for the school. I wanted to also, just a couple of thank yous in a row, obviously. Every year we do a Rotary dictionary project with grade 3. We did that in January as well. It was great. The students really look forward to. We've really talk about the value of a dictionary, and in this kind of day and age of technology, it really serves a wonderful purpose. So I just wanted to thank them for taking the time and organizing that with my third grade team. I don't remember if, I don't believe I reported out on this. I know I had talked about PBIS, which I'll mention in a minute, but in putting together, trying to put together a kind of a homegrown positive behavior intervention system that really kicks off or supports our Common Language for All, which, as you know, is directly related to our mission, vision, core value of the district. I've been kind of talking to my staff, talking to grade level chairs. I'll have an update in BLPT news. We're going to work on that next week. I believe it's next week. We have a meeting to start to put together what that PBIS may look like in the building. But as a result of that, and as a result of really trying to create a system of positive reinforcement with students and acknowledging things that they do, it was great. We had this one quick conversation at the last faculty conference, and literally by the following week we were able to put it in place. We put an affirmation box in the main office, and there's just a pile of scrap paper there. And teachers, just when they see a kid do something nice or work with something, or other kids see each other do good things, they write on there the name of the student, the class they came from, and what it was, and I add it to my morning announcements every single morning. So we started that, and after about the first week, it was quite amazing. You see, students kind of paying more attention about wishing, checking in on your day, or the pleases and thank yous and all that little stuff, all the way up to kind of going out of their way to help teachers organize for the next class, or help a student who's struggling, and all that good stuff. And it was interesting because after about a week or so, I didn't know what to do with that little piece of paper. I felt like, it had a student's name on it. It was something that I read to everyone, and I just felt strange kind of putting it in the recycle bin. So what we started doing was I put a sheet together. I'll just put a copy of it for you. But basically what I do is I actually make a color copy of that note, and I give it to the teacher to give to the student. And on the top, it just is a little sunburst there about kindness. And it basically says, thank you so much for your act of kindness. We acknowledge you during our morning announcement so that all of CLS can share in celebrating your good deed. And then I take the actual sheet, the actual note. Barbara Dooley, one of our aides, laminates it and we give it to the students. So they get to kind of take something home literally every single day, each student. So I know we'll never get to, we only have 183 days and significantly more students in the building, but I just wanted to let you know, recently I actually, every once in a while, since we've started this, I've tell everyone during my announcement that I hijacked the affirmations or acknowledgements. And I kind of focus on just a whole bunch of other kids without names that I know have come up to me. And in my opinion, it really doesn't matter why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're seeing us model it. So I try to kind of acknowledge everyone, and then we kind of go back to individuals. But it's just been a really positive thing. So I wanted to share that with you. Like I said, the LPT News will be nailing down what that kind of looks like. I had mentioned last time, I believe, we're looking for some sort of kind of tree that we can, each grade may have a specific color, or each one of the themes that we're using related to the core values of the district around common language for all. We'll try to create some visual representation of these acts of kindness. So that's what we're doing, pull all these things together. So stay tuned, I'll give you some info on that. I wanted to let you know we finished our partnership with the Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse. Initially, we had brought them in for 2 days, K through 5, early December. We had that I think it was our first delay opening. So we actually had to reschedule that first day to January 11th. So I got a lot of feedback. Every single piece of feedback I've gotten has been positive. K through 5, we've been talking about the last grade level chair meeting at the faculty conference. They just did a wonderful job, and I wanted to kind of let you know, and I brought the information I had with them. But one of the things I thought I was impressed with, and certainly I did my due diligence over the summer leading up to this, getting lesson plans, getting from them for each grade, paying attention to how we correspond with parents and let them know in advance. We did have one family that respectfully called us and said, listen, we'd like to, have our child sit out on that conversation. We're like, okay. So we had her go to another class, but so I knew exactly what they were kind of presenting before they came, but I wanted to give you a little anecdote. Because of that delayed opening, I thought, when I kind of had gotten in, because I hadn't communicated with them, and I started to put the schedule together, consolidate, let's say, K and 1, it is so developmentally appropriate and aligned that a K lesson is different from a first grade lesson. So we were never able to do that because they actually create very specific grade appropriate lessons for each of the 6 grades in my building. So I've been just gathering feedback. It's been 100% positive. So I want to let you know, this was a group we used to bring in years before I had gotten here. I think maybe the first year I was here. Kind of fell out, and we reached back out to them to get them come and present with us. So it was a wonderful, positive experience. I want to let you know, I mentioned Common Language for All. We're focusing on citizenship, which is a new focus. And not only the general idea of citizenship, but I had just recently passed out to parents and staff to discuss digital citizenship as well. It's kind of a connection to that. So I just want to let you know it's kind of a new theme for our initiative. I did want to thank, and certainly, I wanted to thank Mr. Frischknecht and his students. He had come and visited our first grade classes last week to expose them to some of the Malagasy culture. They introduced that to each one of the classes individually, so did 3 sessions, and even stayed afterwards and ate lunch with their first grade counterparts, which was great. And first of all, it was great to see some of the older students, a year or 2 out. But I did want to take a moment. I know he's not a staff member of mine, but he's certainly a staff member of the district. And the things Mr. Frischknecht was doing is quite impressive. And we always kind of talk, even around this table after reports, about how it's nice that we make these connections. It's teachers like him, and certainly my teachers who reciprocate and back and forth, but he really seems to take a forward lean towards trying to get a lot of the things he's doing here down into the elementary school across multiple grades. So there was another example of it. Just real quick, wrapping up, I wanted to thank John and Trish, and certainly Sandy Kane and Arts and Ed for our annual Folk Heritage Unit with CLS students. Last week it culminated with a performance for students and parents, and certainly as they do every year, they learned about folk heritage, folk roots of music and dance, connected to American roots and music. So it was just a great experience. Midday, we have parents come in for the concert. And just a quick curriculum update, I wanted to let you know, we've been using this year something called Teaching for Comprehending and Fluency. It's a resource that I used to use actually before I came to this district. Is when it first kind of came out. They have an updated version, and we've been basically using this resource with our consultant to start this conversation. Now that we've gotten all this theory down on paper about the curriculum, kind of applying balanced literacy to what we're doing or what we've planned. And we started with kind of breaking it up into what we're calling placemats. So a placemat with a visual about like teacher's role, student's role in interactive read aloud, and in shared read alouds, and guided reading, and conferring, things like that. So the whole being that we can kind of start to take that information, and it'll help drive PD moving forward as we're getting really into the practice of what we're doing. So I just wanted you to see that. It's a new initiative this year. It's working very well. Upcoming events, PTSO Book Fair and Ice Cream Social during the first week in March. And we're hoping to do a math info night for parents, possibly mid-March. Still nailing down the details and working with Barbara Brislow and Carrie Martin to try to set something like that up. It's an initiative we wanted to do for a while. So that's what's happening in Chancellor.
Wow, it's a ton of stuff happening.
It's a lot. I'm talking about it.
I'm not sure who's handling it first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It's always really great to hear what's going on in your building. What's the math info night?
Just basically talking about, we wanted to kind of talk about our current program certainly, but just kind of talking to parents about just how math instruction has really changed, kind of give them kind of snippets about each grade, specifically have the two, myself and the two math AS teachers available to really talk about that, and just even get feedback. We're in the process and working with Marvin Krebs over the next year or so to kind of, we have a math task force that we put together specific to the CDEP, one of the big pieces of feedback from the CDEP plan. And we just thought it would probably be a good time to try to get something like that out. So it's just a way of what we're currently doing, how we teach math, the difference, kind of address parent questions, and then certainly get feedback for kind of what we'll work out over the next year or so. The math standards haven't been adopted yet, so
Get a report out on that in a little while.
Diane?
So much great stuff. I just wanted to take a minute to say how impressive it is, just the notes that you sent them, that you would take the time out of your day to do that program, that it means, especially in today's world, that it means a lot. And the kids get that. I'm sure it means a lot to them and their parents, and it's something that's nice that it's not lost.
And it was
in
great.
all our-
It was an idea that came from the staff. It was just like, wow, we can do that.
Yeah.
So,
It's good.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm John. So, things happening at the end. 8th grade ELA classes have just completed their project titled Taking a Stand, Civil Rights in America. Students have been working with local installation artist Mimi Graminsky, as well as Pat Sexton, to look at social injustice through art, and have created art installations to honor those who have taken a stand throughout history. Student work was on display this evening from 5:30 to 7 as part of the gallery opening for parents, but will remain on display through February 16th. Last month, members of the Peer Leadership Club worked with student mentors from Bard College preparing experiments and activities which they ran for the CLS Science Night Out. On January 27th and 28th, 5 BMS students, 4 chorus and 1 band, participated in the Dutchess County Music's Educators Association Junior High All-County Festival at Dover High School. The students were selected based on their NYSSMA solo scores from the previous spring for band and orchestra, or through a recorded audition for chorus. The next 3 BMS students were recognized last week as second quarter nominees in the Catching Kids Caring program. That program is sponsored by the Kiwanis Club and offers us an opportunity to recognize students for demonstration of positive character and leadership. Thanks to the support of Oblong Books, BMS will continue to recognize 3 students, 1 at each grade level, on a quarterly basis. BMS has implemented a new award, which they are calling the Hawk Citizenship Award. in an effort to continue to encourage and recognize positive citizenship in the school community. One student will be recognized each week at each grade level, and the focus of this award centers on behavior during unstructured times such as lunch, recess, and hallway transitions. And nominees are recognized for displaying leadership, respect, inclusion, compassion, empathy, and helpfulness towards others. On January 31st, members of the Peer Leadership Club spent the day presenting to each of the first grade classes as part of their culture unit. The club members taught CLS students about traditional Madagascar culture, including clothing, games, daily life, folk tales, and dance. A little bit more info about what I had mentioned previously. Unfortunately, a snow day resulted in the postponement of the 8th grade day of science. Bard College students scheduled to take place on January 24th. Bard College scheduled it on the 24th. However, it is our hope that we have been told that we will be able to find an alternative date this spring. Winter Chorus concert is tonight. I believe that's where John is right now. This Saturday, several BMS students will be participating in the 8th grade science fair. In its second year, this event is a joint venture comprised of students from both BMS and Linden Avenue Middle School in Red Hook, and will be held at Bard College. Students will have an opportunity to attend a presentation given by Dr. Gabriel Perron, Assistant Professor of Biology, whose specialty is microbiology and public health. They'll then present their original research projects from hypothesis to data collection and analysis to findings to a panel of judges to compete for prizes and bid for a Dutchess County Regional Science Fair. And in just 1 year, our participation in this event has risen to equal that of Red Hook. And next year, we hope to open the competition to 6th and 7th grade students as well. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about our BMS tutoring program and a story that was shared with John just last week, and he gave me a little info about that, so I'll do my best. As I've mentioned, as John has mentioned, we're always looking for ways to work across buildings and partner our students with elementary and high school students. So one of the ways they've done this is to cultivate quite a large number of high school students that serve both as tutors and mentors for at-risk middle schoolers. And in some cases, a student or a group of students assist with small group instruction during an actual class. So in other cases, some of these high school students assist middle school teachers in their after-school extra help classes on a weekly basis. But the majority of high school students give up their free periods to work with individuals one-on-one, and they become an integral part of a student support network. And the anecdote quickly that John had shared with me was, I guess there was a middle school or high school tandem. They were working together. The middle schooler had a project that was very heavy in editing and revising and things like that. And unfortunately, the middle schooler got sick, and basically the high school student, through text and email and phone, and did everything they could to make sure that the student was still kind of mentored and helped through the process while they were out of school. So I just wanted to share that with the student going above and beyond.
That's great. That's
And
nice.
that is it.
Thanks, John.
Very impressive.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Chris.
Hello again. I wanted to begin with a few academic updates. First by recognizing and thanking the Social Studies Department for developing a lesson plan on the history of the United States presidential inauguration, which accompanied our school assembly. In the math department, those faculty members are working on a proposal that will allow them to shadow a couple of master teachers in Lake Placid High School who have extensive experience in using the flipped classroom. In our art department, 2 of our students last week presented their work at a jury art show hosted by Columbia Green Community College. One of our artists from the high school was recognized with an honorable mention award, and you can see their work in our most recent newsletter, which was most impressive. In our faculty has been talking about ways to research and implement something called the growth mindset, which very briefly is something that was developed by Stanford professor Carol Dweck. And the growth mindset holds that the ability to learn, or we'll use a metaphor, the brain, is something that's not fixed. So just like any other muscle, the ability to learn in the brain can improve with practice. And that's opposed to something that's known as a fixed mindset. So in terms of providing feedback to students and in terms of working with students, the attitude here is to emphasize process over product, work over an innate ability. And what Professor Dweck has shown in her research is that emphasizing this attitude really helps to increase student achievement. So the faculty has been talking about ways to implement this in the classroom and in informal feedback, and we'll continue to do work on this promising field of research. It's not new research, it's probably about 30 years old, but very powerful. The BLPT meets next week. We'll continue planning a day of service. In addition, we'll begin discussion regarding the possible implementation of an academic honor code. And just by way of background, do you ever look for something to watch on Netflix?
Once in a
Once
while.
or twice? Do you spend more time looking than
Yes.
actually watching?
Yes.
If you're looking for a documentary, came across something called Dishonesty, and the dis is in parentheses, and it features the work of a psychology professor, I believe, from the Princeton Institute of Advanced Studies. And he shares a number of psychological experiments that reveal ethical and unethical behavior among human beings. And one case study that he describes, and I won't go into any more detail than to say that it compares an honor code that's used at MIT and compares it to Yale, which is a fascinating experiment and got us thinking about the use of an honor code in an academic environment. So the BLPT will be talking about that. And for what it's worth, I recommend that documentary. Not terribly long and very interesting. In co-curricular activities, the Creative Writing Club and a Writers' Workshop class will again attend the LitCon at Woodstock Day School in about a month. This is a conference for literature and art lovers, and students will participate in writing workshops and in developing a literary magazine. As I'm sure you know, drama club rehearsals and stage work are in full swing in preparation for our spring musical. Opens on March 31st. Again, as I'm sure you're aware, students from our model UN trip to the Nobel Summit returned last night at 12:15 a.m. They were thankful regarding the 2-hour delay.
Is that why you did it?
That's the only reason.
Once they've caught up on their sleep, we look forward to planning with the advisor, with the students, ways for them to share their experiences with their faculty and with their peers. The National Honor Society will be sponsoring a senior citizens prom this year, scheduled for April 22nd. Our Spanish club has a number of updates. You recall their very popular Walking Taco fundraiser. They've used proceeds from the Walking Taco fundraiser as well as the t-shirt sales to reach out to local immigrant communities and help meet some of their needs in terms of holiday baskets containing necessities and toys. Club members also continue their efforts closer to home, and they deliver these baskets to families who are enrolled in English as a second language class. And they're also involved in communicating with students and adults in Oaxaca through a pen pal program. So we're very impressive work on behalf of the Spanish Club. Our Science Club, with the support of Mr. King, is planning a science show at CLS next week. Is that still?
Yeah,
still a go?
I'm going to be there for
All right, February 13th, to demonstrate some experiments and scientific principles to their younger peers. And as Brad and John mentioned, it's very important to us to continue to foster those connections between all of our students, but particularly our older students, in a peer and a mentorship scenario. And lastly, this kind of came out of the blue, but it's new and we thought it was interesting. The French Club will be working with our local postmaster to sponsor a passport day. And the idea here is to make the ability to apply for your passport easier for some of our students and for our community members. So we'll sponsor that here at the school early in March, most likely to take place, from 3 to 6. But the French Club is interested in hosting that activity, and hopefully we'll have good sign-ups for that. So that's some of the activities in the high school.
Lisa?
I wanted to ask you about something that you mentioned right at the beginning of your address.
Yeah.
The inauguration day presentation, viewing of the the speech and the investment. I had heard anecdotally that there was a little bit of, not quite sure what the right adjective to use is, a little bit of tension possibly amongst certain groups of students about the political atmosphere of the day. Can you comment on that?
I can certainly comment, nothing that was brought to my attention. Nothing that I observed or any of my faculty observed directly. I will say that and I would expect nothing less, the students in the auditorium were, as they always are, respectful and productive participants in the assembly format.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
And then you mentioned, was it math faculty doing some shadowing of,
They're working on a proposal, yes.
oh, it's a proposal
Correct.
to shadow
Yes.
someone in another school district?
Yeah, so master teachers in the same program that
Kristen
Kristen
Gold's
Gold's
in,
and Jason
okay.
Stevenson are in. And they teach at Lake Placid High School. So there'll
Okay.
be some, again, if the proposal is approved,
Right.
there'll be some cost associated with their working with those teachers.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Brett.
All right, we'll move on to the 2017-18 budget development update.
Okay, Tom, I'll turn it over to you. We've provided you a lot of paper over the course
Yeah.
of three
I'm
three
going through
different
trying to organize myself.
agendas, and Tom's going to give you some more tonight.
Oh, okay, that stuff is not in
His
here.
binder has gotten very big.
There's
Since the last
there's more
meeting.
stuff coming at you.
I feel like I've been demoted. I got a skinny binder this year. I was thinking it was going to be easy.
Come here, pass this way. Is one of these from me, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. Marion, maybe you could grab one for Deidre
Oh,
down
I
there.
have one here.
Oh, you do,
Yeah,
okay.
I have.
Okay, all right.
Where to start?
Yeah.
Well, I think probably what we should do is go over the changes first, just to give you an idea of what's going on. And take the big paper clip off this should be on the back. The last one should have the changes that have occurred since the first draft. So it should be the one in the back there. So, let's go over the changes that have occurred since
January 10th.
January 10th, God, that's a while ago. See, that was about a month ago, yeah, 4 weeks. So, we had a first draft budget that was 4.62, and there was a difference between our revenues and expenditures of over $1 million, just over $1 million. So, since then, we have notification of some retirements, and we also have had notification of a change in the TRS rate, which was set at 9.8, and I had budgeted 10.5. So I want to go over the increases first, and what this is the following. I initially, in my first pass, and we'll see that the first two here are the middle school and the high school, and also the middle school down below in the first deduct. I put everybody's FTEs together, but I forgot one thing. I forgot the music department's lessons. So I had to put them back up to full one, because they're split between buildings, so I could easily see a one, but when I added because they're all split across buildings, when I added them back up, I noticed I had forgot a couple FTEs, so that's the reason for that. In the middle school, that's extra work that's done by the librarian here that I'm making sure it's in the budget, because I did not put it in the budget last year, and as I was looking over this year's expenditures, realized that that was something that was missing from the budget for next year. And the salaries down at the bottom, one of the things that before in the past is that we've been able to absorb the summer work that is done by our athletic director, and I am actually now just really budgeting for it. We've been able to do it in the past, but now I'm budgeting for every single penny, trying to make sure that everything is covered, and that was one thing I had overlooked in the past. So we had additions of 73,700, but if you look below, we have deletions of over $500,000. No position has been taken out of this budget. What I did was take the retirements and apply the breakage to it, okay? And basically, I just, redid everything based on that. Now, there's a couple of things to know. Breakage this year is not as much as in previous years. It's only about $45,000. Big reason for that was a lowering of the TRS rates, and so that's really the big reason why you're not seeing like 50 to 55,000. Sometimes up to 60 depending on the position, but typically we're seeing 45 to 50 on these breakages. So what I did was go through and take out the breakage through the first two lines, which is basically where in the guidance, which is the fifth line down. So in the negative lines 1, 2, and 5 are for the decreases that we're looking to approve tonight based on the retirements of these personnel. In the 2250, both those codes, the 472 and the 490, we were able to lower these by almost about $120,000. Our Director of Special Education, we've been meeting like every 2 weeks and fine-tuning it. We've confirmed 3 graduations for next year, but also at the same time, we also have a child coming in. But we were able to decrease the special ed budget by almost $120,000. And as you will see through the rest of them, I'll talk about the $150,000 one, and that's from the New York State retirement system. I budgeted 10.5. The retirement system set the rate at 9.8, a deduction of 0.7%. So that's a big part of the $150,000, but not all of it, because what I've done then throughout the rest of these particular codes, as we see Social Security to ERS, health insurance, those are some deductions based on the retirements. Going forward with negotiations, was able to shave some off of there. Plus, I looked and went back to Social Security and looked at the trend over the past 5 years and discovered that I could bring that down a little bit more to tighten up, which does tighten up the budget. So in this particular draft, we were able to reduce the overall budget by $436,000. So we have a budget right now a little under $33.2 million. 3.26% increase from the previous year.
That's budget to budget increase.
Right, that is budget to budget. And as we turn the page over, we'll have the revenues in here too, but that drives a tax increase of 4.43%.
Tax levy increase,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, this is
Okay.
the tax levy increase, 4.43. We have a limit of 2.18%, which right now we're a little over $604,000 as being the difference between our revenues and our expenditure budget. So that's kind of a quick overview of the changes that have come. But I mean, we did get our state aid runs. They weren't particularly encouraging. We saw increases in foundation aid of $18,000. Transportation was up about $40,000. BOCES was up about $40,000. But we had a decrease in our excess cost aid, which is based on our children who are in our special education program and monies that are returned to us. I know many of you were there when we met with the Senator Serino, and I gave an explanation there as to why. What's happening is that even though our expenses are going up, our numbers that generate aid are going up at a faster pace than actually the actual costs are. So it's reduced the amount of aid that's coming back to us. So even though our expenses are getting greater, our aid coming back is less. So I adjusted our aid down by $50,000. I had a nice conversation this afternoon with our treasurer, Christine Natoli. She was able to find some more monies by going back through previous years and is refiling some of our state aid, and will generate some extra aid for us. we won't see it in aid runs. This is money that'll just come directly to us. But it was a nice significant amount. I mean, she found, we figure we'll get at least about $40,000 back just in that 1 year. And we're gonna move forward to the other years to see what else we can come back and redo. We're going back over to find every penny we can as far as that's concerned.
Are we going to be able to find 600,000 plus?
No, we are not gonna be able to find that much. I will have to say that. You know, can some of these things be pared back a little bit more? Yeah, but we still have a significant difference right now. And of course, we would have loved to have some more retirements, but they didn't materialize. So that didn't help us as much as I had hoped it would, that's for sure. I mean, typically in years past, we had 10 and 12 as when a contract ended, so we had basically 3.5 as far as that's concerned. So
What's really hurting us, in my opinion, is the state aid side. I mean, the $54,000 is our increase in the state aid runs. Only $18,000 of it is actual aid increase. The rest of it is generated by monies we spent.
Right.
The majority of that is resulting from expense-driven aid, not.
It's money, right, it's increased costs.
That's right. We spend more at BOCES, we get more BOCES aid. That's in there. I've asked Tom, and hopefully by our next meeting, he'll be able to have some figures for us. I asked Tom, what's that?
I ran the reports, I haven't.
Well, I haven't looked at them either yet, so we'll save that for the next meeting. But I asked Tom to see if he could find out, you've obviously all read a lot about the fact that the governor's, and this is the governor's proposal.
Yeah.
Just a proposal, it hasn't been adopted by the legislature. But included in his proposal is a remajiggering of the foundation aid formula, which was mandated by the courts back a number of years ago. So not only is he flying in the face of the directive of a judge from several years back, but he's distributing it in some other ways, and obviously we're not getting very much of that. So I asked Tom to find out how much we would be getting, and to the best he can calculate it in a very complicated formula, how much we would be getting if the foundation aid formula continued to run and continued to drive money to school districts based on that formula. I'm, more than anything else, I'm curious to see what the difference is. It could be not significant, it could be,
Very
I
significant.
hate to use the word, but it could be huge. And I just want to know that, because I think that gives us some talking points when we talk to our legislators. Hey, let the foundation formula run. We need this, whatever it is. If it's more than 18,000, it's significantly more than what we're getting. Otherwise, it's not a fight we probably want to bother fighting. But so we'll have that information for you, or at least an estimate of that next time. Obviously more state aid is going to help us. Out of that $600,000, whatever we get more is less we're going to have to pare our budget back. So that's something we're looking at very closely right now. Yeah.
Since you're looking at projections of what we might be entitled to, what we might be able to get, may I also suggest that, Tom, you look at what the average of the increases that the legislature has delivered to the district over the course of whatever time period you think is a relevant period. I don't know what would be a relevant period, but I know that in the time that I've sat on the board, every year the legislature has given us more in state aid than the governor has originally proposed. And I think it would be useful for us as we move forward with our own planning process to have a sense of what the likely universe looks like. I'm sure it's not the same number every year, but it's probably not that different from year to year.
It may give us a ballpark idea at best, but
Yeah.
better than not having that. So that's something we can take a look at.
Okay, I appreciate that.
No, it's a good idea.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt your
no,
presentation if you had more to,
Well, we gave you the Reader's Digest version,
Right.
and I'm not sure whether there is value in plowing through all the paperwork we gave you. Certainly, if there are questions, either tonight or when we meet next, we're glad to discuss it at any point, just so you know what we're about right now. We have been meeting very intensively and frequently with our 3 building principals and with our director of special education, because when you're looking at closing a gap, a potential gap, that's really where you have to look. We've pretty much taken the low-hanging fruit out of the budget. We've nickel and dimed it over the number of years, and as best I can tell, and I'm guessing Tom would agree, there isn't a lot left. You can only cut so many pencils out of the supply budget to make any kind of difference in the bottom line. So we're having some very serious conversations about staffing right now. And we've tasked our building principals to look everywhere they can, starting with positions that are being vacated through retirement, and whether there are any possibilities there of, we're looking at everything, consolidating services, consolidating numbers of classes. I mean, we're looking across the board. And we'll be coming back to you fairly soon with lists of possibilities that we're looking at. We had this will probably come up in at least one of the board committee reports, but we had a very robust conversation earlier this week about potential staffing cuts and where making those cuts might make sense, specifically cutting positions that might result in a 0.8 FTE staff member or a 0.6 FTE. So we're looking at possible ways to consolidate, to be as creative as we can, so that if we have to cut, we're not generating a school full of part-time teachers. I mean, that's somewhat of an exaggeration, but for a lot of reasons, that's not the best outcome if we could avoid it. So we're looking at those options to try to minimize or avoid that. Can't sit here and say, honestly, we're going to be able to do that. I mean, that's our goal in a perfect world. We know it's not a perfect world, but I think we've had some reasonably promising discussions with all of our, again, our 3 principals and Emily, and I only use their names because they supervise the staff-heavy, program-heavy parts of our budget, and they're now having cross-conversations with one another, because as we've discussed in a few different forums, a reduction in one building may likely have an impact on the staffing in another building. So we know we've all got to pull this together, and once we tease out some individual concepts, then we've got to say, okay, if we do this here, how is that going to affect the program there? So that's what we're spending a lot of, I mean, it's a good time, I'm not complaining, but we're spending a lot of time. Tom and I have been meeting with them at least several times in the last week and a day to say, let's talk about your program, let's talk about your staffing, let's look at what the possibilities are, let's be creative, let's come up with ways to trim our budget with the least impact on program offerings. Again, that's a goal,
Right.
that's an ideal, that's where we're, what we're striving for. Ultimately, you'll be the arbiters of, and the voters ultimately, of, whether we've been successful with that. But I think we have some possibilities that will help us. And perhaps a combination of some additional state aid and some of these adjustments may get us closer to where we are and still maintain the integrity of our program. That's the balancing act we're trying to arrive at by the time we get another couple of weeks down the road. So, yeah, at least.
Okay, so I'm glad you gave us that explanation. That was very useful for me. First of all, I want to ask Tom, aside from what's in the draft budget now and that you've already talked about, are there any other significant unknowns other than, what the final state aid number will be?
Health insurance being one.
When will we know that?
I have a meeting next Wednesday in which we will get an update as to where the initial meeting was at. It gives us a good point, what Empire brought to them to say, this is what we believe it is. This is the number. So there's usually some negotiation down from that, but at least it gives us a good idea as to where it goes from there. And typically, it's been pretty accurate after the first initial meeting. We're exactly within a percentage point, one way or the other, of where it's going to end up.
What's your expectation now, or do you not, is it too soon to say?
I think it's, unfortunately, the last month going into negotiations, DHIC had their worst month ever. So it put it at a bad footing going into that. Not that it looks back the past 12 months, but it was not a good number, and it only put us in a worse position as far as negotiation is concerned. I budgeted 15%. 15%. I don't think it will go above 15%, but I'm not sure how far down it would go. We all thought it would go down to about 12. But now it's kind of up in the air. We're waiting for our meeting next Wednesday to get a good idea where we're at.
Any other big?
Well, we got a workers' comp meeting this Friday. It could end up being a savings of $10,000 to $20,000. The fund is in a better place than it's been in a long time. And we've made some inroads with that. In fact, one of the things I changed on the revenue side in this budget is there's something called a second injury fund, in which when an employee gets hurt, if they've been hurt before, they go back also to that employer or whatever, workers' comp they were dealing with. You hurt your knee at this location and you hurt your knee here, well, we're going to go back to the first one also. And so we have two former employees in which we are still receiving money from second injury, and we've accumulated about $25,000 in the account so far. So I'm going to use that to offset next year's bill. It's $25,000. So that's on the revenue side. So that was one thing I did there. So there are some things through there that we can really take a look at, looking at all the different equipment that's in there. I mean, some of those things, do we really make a value judgment if we need some things? Another area to potentially look at too would be the technology plan. What exactly is going on for next year? There's quite a bit of money available to expand the program as far as equipment wise. It doesn't really matter now how far you want to expand. I'd have to sit down with Steve to know exactly how much money, but
those aren't external unknowns, those are
there's no place I can
Right.
say there's 50,000. Now, there could be a couple places in special education where there could be the ability. There's a couple of them that on the fence as to whether one or two of them may graduate, so that's a possibility. So to have some big chunks of money. Then again, it could come around the other way where somebody's identified or moves into our district that could go the other way.
But these are things we need to look at within our budget. They're not
Understood.
externally.
Right, which is what I was focusing
It's not
on.
like we're sitting here in the middle of January saying, we don't know how many retirements we're going to get.
No, understood.
We know how many retirements we're going to get. That's
Right. Okay.
that's a done deal, okay, and that helped. Tom already talked about the health insurance piece. So that's an unknown right now, and Tom is doing his job by being a pessimist, okay? But that's what he's supposed to do, and we plan for the worst and hope for the best, and
Okay.
we'll get what we have to get eventually. I think the BOCES budget is pretty well set in terms of their increases, so I'm not seeing.
Little tweaking, but.
I'm not seeing a big savior out there that's gonna, well, hey, wow, you guys get another $200,000.
Okay.
I don't see it. It's
All
not
right.
there.
So, having set the table, I would encourage you both and your staff to try to complete your analysis as quickly as you can so that we have as much time as possible to talk about what our options are. Because right now, we're roughly 6 weeks away from the date when the state's budget's going to be set. And that gives us another couple of weeks after that to finalize our budget. And one thing that I do not think that we can afford to do this year, which we did last year, and have done in the past, is, sort of try to finagle these budget numbers and these gaps around at the last minute to try to make it work. I do not think it is too soon, maybe a couple of weeks too soon, but not much too soon, to start thinking about the potential for having to go out to our community and say, we cannot run the school district that you want us to run on the amount of money that we have to run it. And we're going to need to help us do that by adopting a budget that exceeds the tax levy cap. Last year, we somehow managed at the 11th and a half hour to find a way, largely I think through fund balance, to close that gap. Partly it was the gap elimination adjustment money that also.
It was state aid.
But we're not getting that
Not
this
getting that
year.
this year.
We're not getting any gifts like that. So let us not assume that we're going to be able to fix this at the last minute without harming our programs. Let us prepare for that. And if I would be I just say it now, I would be very strongly against the idea of making significant program cuts that it's going to qualitatively affect our programs in order to close this budget gap without trying to find an alternative. So,
Would you repeat what you just said
Yes.
again, so I make sure I
I would
understood
be
it the way I
very
heard it?
strongly against trying to bridge the gap, whatever the gap turns out to be between what we're getting and what we have to run the district and what we need to reach the number that we need to reach, without finding an alternative, if what we would have to do to reach that number is make qualitative cuts to our programs.
Okay.
Okay?
To that point, I think in order for us to be able, if we choose to, go out to the community and say we need more support than what the tax levy allowed, I think we also need to be able to communicate what we're looking at in terms of what it means to stay within the cap. Does it mean we're making all of these teachers 0.8 or 0.6, or are we just accessing 3 positions wholesale? We can't just go out to them and say, we really can't do this. It's just irresponsible. So I would like to have those options, and so that we can discuss those options
Yes.
before we have to go to the community and
Yes, which is another reason why we have as much time built into this
to
as we
deliberate. yeah.
possibly have.
So one of the concerns I have about going out to the community is that there's no plan for year 2, 3, and 4, right? So you're gonna go out this year and say, we need to get more money to run our programs, but next year I may have to do it again. right? So if we're gonna do that, I think the next part of that conversation is really to get a plan for moving forward. How are we not gonna be in this position again next year?
I agree.
And I think that's very important, going out once and saying this is a one and done versus this is gonna be an every year type of event.
Agreed, absolutely.
So that would be important to you to have that.
Yeah, when we've been talking with the principals and that, and with the director of special ed, we've been talking not only more focused on next year, we've also talked about what are the possibilities down the road to save the ones from going to a point eight, how do we do it, and when do we do it? So those conversations are happening, but, yeah, it's happening. We're putting that all together.
Diane?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I mean, even though I think some of our legislators think that's the answer, just to go out to your community from now on, if you need something, or make the cuts, I mean, you have to look at that, what it's going to be next year. But for this year, I mean, we would have to look at that, because we just went out to the community to ask for money for our capital project, so it would be difficult to go out again in the same year, a few months later, and ask for more money again. So there's a lot to consider. And cutting back might be what we have to do. I mean, we'll have to look at the plan going forward, but we'd have to look at all of those things.
May I address that? I mean, I hear the point that you don't want to go to the community too much. You don't want to go out with your hat in your hand and say, we can't live within our means. And we've had people make comments like that. Why can't you live within your means? The problem that we have is that we can't control our means. This isn't like, an individual who, if he has a job and he's not getting the salary that he needs, can go look for another job that pays better. We've got what we got. The state tells us what it's going to give us. The state tells us what we can raise. And the choice between cutting our educational program so it does not deliver the kind of education that we want it to deliver, and saving ourselves the embarrassment of going out to our community twice in one school year for a completely different purpose is not, I think, a choice that we should be making for ourselves. I think that we owe it to our community to allow our teachers and our administrators to deliver the best education that they're capable of delivering. We shouldn't be saying, well, we've already asked the community once to pay for a capital project. We shouldn't go back and ask them to pay more than the 2.18% that the tax levy cap allows. Now, the community could say, we will not approve an increase beyond that. They have that right. They may say that. But I don't think we should be fearful if it's a choice between cutting our program to make it not what we want to deliver and, just not asking. I don't think we're at the point where we have to decide yet, but I think that we should not kid ourselves that this year we're probably going to have to make that decision.
From what Joe said earlier, and I don't think I really heard cutting programs, right? It's more about being able to consolidate in lieu of some of the retirements and making things maybe work more efficiently across the different buildings. So I agree with what you said, but I don't know if we're even close to that, right? So I think, let's get some more data, and as we get closer to the state run aid and we know all those numbers, then I think that conversation has a lot more validity. I think we're just kind of talking, kind of what ifs right now, and I think the what ifs are so big that it's,
Well, I just to kind of spin off that thought and to respond to Lisa, our goal is to do the best we can with developing this budget so as not to compromise the programs and services that we deliver to kids. That's our goal.
Yes.
Whether we're able to meet that goal or meet that goal at this level or this level or this level, I mean, that's on us right now. And I can tell you that we are working diligently to do that. to the extent that at some point we're unable to do that, to close that entire gap with the couple other little pieces that are still in play and that are probably, at least on the state aid side, is probably going to be in play until on or around April 1st, because you know how that game works in New York State, okay? But I just want to make our goal clear to all of you and to whoever else may be watching this on YouTube at some point. That is our goal. And the discussion is at some point, hopefully sooner than later, is if we can't do that, or to the extent that we can't do that, what are the other options? Is exceeding the tax cap an option for the board versus doing this that in fact compromises our programs and services in some way? I'm not talking about across the board everything, but there may be a slice of that we may come to you and say the only way we can close this gap is to, I'm just speaking generally, I don't have anything in mind, is to get rid of this program. Then the board will have to decide, okay, is that something we can live with, or is that something we need to go out to our community and say, you know what, this is gone unless we get that additional support. But I mean, look, you're right, we're not ready to have that conversation tonight because we don't have the data to give you as we sit here tonight, but we're working on that diligently.
Deirdre?
Yeah, so I just want to second a couple of the points that Lisa made, though, I think all the points here have been good, but just that the sooner we get some information on that, the better, so the more time we have to absorb, knowing that there's some things that are not going to be fully in focus, but for a little while. And secondly, I just want to note that I think that perspective that you just said is valuable to think about as we go through this, which is, that putting the potential to put out for vote a vote that exceeds a budget that exceeds the tax cap could be looked at as, that it's not up to us. Perhaps the community will support that. Knowing right now that's a theoretical thing. We can't weigh it against what the other option is, but we have a second vote that we could, we need a plan B, obviously. But I think that perspective is just an interesting way to look at it. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a desperate measure, but it could be more a legitimate question. We put it to our community to say, what do you support? And I'm glad you raised that as a new way of looking at that. Should we be considering exceeding the cap? But yes, we have lots of time yet not lots, but we have time. We have pieces of information.
We don't need a decision tonight.
That we need to fill in.
Yeah. Agreed.
Lisa?
Thank you. Just to key off on something that you just said, Joe, a moment ago, about the possibility, again, all theoretical at this point, of putting before us having to cut a program. This raises, and it keys into something that Steve said a moment ago as well, this raises the problem that we have had in the past about the idea of cutting something that once you cut, you can't get back. So, cutting a program or cutting part of a program or cutting a position is something that is a one-shot. It's not necessarily going to give you a benefit over time. And once it's gone, getting it back is going to be very difficult and increasingly difficult in more straitened financial times. So, to Steve's point, if we were in a position of having to seek approval of a budget that exceeded the tax levy cap, then it should not be that we ask for, a penny more than we need to get over the cap, because we will be doing it again in the next budget year, because we will be facing the same kind of pressures in the next budget year. If we go down this road, we should be going down it, planning to ask for what we think would give us enough of a base to support our programs over the next several years. And then if the economy improves and we receive better state aid, or, I can't remember the name of the figure, the growth factor.
Combined wealth ratio?
Right, continues to increase and drive more money to us, then that's great. But we won't be doing the same thing next year at this time that we're doing this year at this time, and we won't be looking at going to a budget busting, a cap busting budget every year.
Yeah, at the risk of belaboring the conversation, albeit a good conversation and one that we have to have, and the sooner the better, I just want to make it clear that I was neither advocating
I understand.
for cutting programs. I'm certainly, when you work in a district for 19 years, building programs, the last thing you want to do is cut programs, okay? That goes against every fiber of why I do this job every day. That was purely a hypothetical for ease of
Understood.
wrapping our heads around it, so I wouldn't want anybody to take that the wrong way, and we will work our tails off not to be in that situation. But there's nothing that you said that I disagree with, or Deirdre, or anybody else, actually.
Right.
Everybody's talking the same language here, and I think, if we stay united with a focus, we'll do what we have to do for our kids. That's our goal.
All right, anything else on the budget development? Okay, move on to committee reports. First up is communications.
Okay, there are 3 communications reports in place. They were all done by me. I don't know how that happened.
You're done for the
You are
year.
lucky girl.
Must have missed a meeting or something.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'll try to be succinct here. The first one I'll start with is the meeting on January 12th. It's 4.4.1. And we did discuss what issues we might want to address with our elected officials when we meet with legislators. Tom joined the meeting to talk about the impact of the combined wealth ratio as a tool in state aid formulas. And, I think we're all pretty familiar with that. The point being that you get less state aid in various circumstances based on your combined wealth ratio, which the combined wealth ratio is income reported plus top property wealth. But that we're hamstrung by the requirement of a 60% affirmative vote on state budgets. So what is the relationship between your wealth and a lack of state aid now under the tax cap, right? So, you maybe could still argue if it was just like 50 plus 1 on your budget that your wealth, but we're sort of hamstrung by that rule. So Tom had some ideas about mitigating the use of the combined wealth ratio, perhaps an idea of eliminating, X number of the top earners because they're outliers and that impacts it, not in our community, not only in our community, but in others. Perhaps using number of food and reduced lunch in place of the combined wealth ratio. So I thought that was really useful. Also, combined wealth ratio can be used in number 2 around excess cost aid calculations. And Tom pointed out that using the combined wealth ratio, I think this was an important point, so that if a child goes to a BOCES program from our district or from a core district, the costs are the same, but we get less aid for it. And then this P-TECH program at Ulster Community College, I did not know about that, but there are costs built into what is a very good program, a 6-year program that is high school through an associate's degree, but we are paying the cost of the associate's degree of the community college for 2 years. So maybe later people could talk about whether this came up with Sue Serino or not, but that seemed like good ideas, Tom. Thank you for joining that. We talked about the meeting with our support groups regarding maintaining dynamic schools, and I'll give you that report momentarily. And Ed Schindler's continuing to work on the mobile-friendly website. But there are more updates on that, an additional report. So the next meeting that we had was February 3rd, and that was with our school support groups, called it a roundtable, and the purpose of the meeting was to have a discussion around sustaining dynamic public schools. We had representatives from the RSF, from Culture Connect, and from ENTA. Unfortunately, the PTSO was not, didn't send a representative, but we'll reach out to them. We really set the stage and discussing kind of what the challenges are with the tax cap, do a little bit of really basic how state aid works. That says how state works, but it means it's how state aid works. And, just kind of the discussion we just had. We have a great program, K-12. We have declining enrollment. We gave the data around declining enrollment. And we have a tax cap. So we just want to open it up about what people think about the challenges, what do they think about this issue of, maintaining a robust program versus what else we might do. So as you can see from the comments that I included in the report, a lot of great questions and perspectives. I think it was a lot to take in that hour. I mean, we had good discussion, but I wouldn't want to represent what people said as sort of their final word on it, because it was, kind of a new discussion. I think that the people there are big supporters of our school, and one of the big things that came out of it, I think that everyone agreed on, is communicating to the non-parent community about how strong our schools are. Was something that pretty immediately people felt like kind of let us know that was something that we should be considering. We had discussions about sharing resources with other districts, about online learning. There was a comment that it would be useful to have an umbrella organization that supports the school as a whole. Definitely, people did communicate that a couple of people felt that they had personal interactions with people who come here with young families that come here for the schools. So you could ask more questions about that when I'm done. In the next meeting, then on Monday, we met, and I'll get to that debrief in a minute, but just to get you updated, the mobile site should be launched soon, the next few days. And Superintendent Conference Day on the 17th is coming up with a technology focus. So those are just simple updates, but the community debrief was really, again, so we thought about that we should create an informational brochure, digital and perhaps with limited paper distribution. People wouldn't want all the taxpayers to get a brochure and then think, oh, they're spending their money on glossy brochures. The feedback from the group was that it's kind of, they felt like not really necessary or the right time for a larger public meeting about these issues. maybe if some of the questions came into more focus. They were interested in collection of some data, but we need to sort of define more what data. So that's what we're going to work on. And I'll just point out, though, around this issue of like concerns around staffing, shared staff, online education, et cetera. We did have a discussion about that. Deirdre Delbert pointed out that as an example, that contingent faculty in higher education can be really problematic in terms of relationships with students, helping students that have various needs. That kind of relationship at the high school level or K-12 level is particularly important, writing recommendations. We also had a discussion about just that online education can be also very labor intensive, even though you don't have human contact, because you have to email constantly and have online contact. And I'm just throwing out, these are just like things that were discussed, not that, you know, anybody was saying we should go down one road or another. But just, I think at our committee, we just wanted to affirm, while we need to be creative, we also need to recognize that this is a very human and relationship-based thing that we do here. Next steps, we're going to invite the Claudia Cooley from the Chamber of Commerce staff to come to our next meeting to discuss reaching out to the community in that way, brochure development, and then we thought we would, the topic of our next coffee with the board, which we don't have a date for, would be sustaining dynamic schools, to maybe address this conversation in that venue. Any questions or comments about that?
You've had a busy couple months.
We have.
More like a couple of weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
this all happened in a very compressed time frame.
All right, any questions for the Communications Committee?
I would just like to share that Steve gave me a newsletter from the Capital Region about, it's a Realtors brochure about, you know, tell me about the schools. So, well, maybe I should give this to you.
That's fine, I'll be the keeper of the...
And send it to the committee.
Yes,
so-
yes, I can do that, sir.
And if anybody
Thanks, Steve.
who's not on the Communications Committee, you know, has thoughts about why should we support public education? What should we be, you know, why is our program so great? We want your voices too, because it's a board effort. We just happen to be the mouthpiece.
Yeah, and as a homeowner, as a property owner, what's in it for you as a member of this community who doesn't have kids who come here every day?
Exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the focus point, I think.
It was a good discussion with our groups,
Yeah.
I thought. Absolutely.
And I've already invited Claudia Cooley to our meeting.
Okay,
I sent
great.
her an email this afternoon. I thought I...
Saw that, yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, just so you know, that invitation's already gone out, as well as a second request to place me and Mark on the agenda of the Chamber's April meeting, like we've done the last several years, to give us another opportunity, another venue to give voice to this idea. And I think, even though we've talked about other things, budget and program, I think using this idea of, sustaining dynamic schools in the Rhinebeck area community is probably a pretty good focal point for our public conversations going forward, at least in the near future. So I'll let you know if we meet with her, are able to meet with her and or speak at the chamber. So that's already gone out in the ether.
Okay, next up is Policy Committee. I did those minutes, those are actually in the book from the last 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, one of the few things that's actually bound.
So the committee started out by reviewing some new policies, or revised revisions to policies on the use of computers by staff and students, and information security breach and notification. These policies need to be updated due to changing technologies and changes in statutory requirements. So we had a homework assignment to review those draft policies.
Thank you for reminding me about that homework
yeah,
assignment.
and come back with our feedback at the next meeting.
Which is this Thursday.
Yes.
Yes, I have
Indeed.
a conflict.
So there might be a snow day.
Well, it might, but you didn't hear it from me.
It's gonna snow anyway.
Yeah.
So just like the kids, no homework.
All right. So then we just updated ourselves on, there's 3 policies that we are waiting on updates from various committees and individuals. So we're still waiting on those. At that point, we invited Steve Boucher into the meeting to discuss policy 5280, interscholastic athletics, specifically reference to how coaches evaluate players during tryouts with respect to skills and knowledge of the game, character, coachability, work ethic, and commitment. And he indicated that coaches should have some sort of rubric that they're using to evaluate players, including those areas, and be prepared to discuss their reasoning for cuts with a student or parents when asked to do so. Following that discussion, the committee decided that there was no need for revision to the policy because we had been discussing that language and whether we should revise it, and so we decided that it wasn't necessary. So then we looked at 2 more policies from the policy book, suspected child abuse and maltreatment, for which we felt there were no changes needed, and also student records. So our legal counsel is suggesting that we have an additional category for limited directory information to be permitted to be distributed to students or parents, guardians, PTAs, educational foundations, or the Alumni Association, which would be limited to an address, phone number, and email. Parents could then be given the right to opt out of information sharing. So that was our meeting. Our next meeting will be reviewing those technology policies mentioned earlier. Any questions? Laura?
Just the difference between directory information and limited directory information. What additional information would be in a directory besides name, address, phone number, and email?
Grade? Class?
I'm trying to remember what, she gave us a list.
Yeah, okay.
I'd have to get back to you. Anybody else can throw me a line here, but
I think there were student numbers or
Yeah.
something like that. Or
But we don't ever publish those.
no.
Okay.
And that's what we're talking about, whether,
Yeah.
and we could modify that list too, I mean.
We haven't made a decision.
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right, move on to facilities.
Okay, so I took those. As you might imagine, we spent all meeting talking about the facilities capital project, which was passed, seems like 8 years ago. And so we had our whole consultant team present with us. The folks from Tetra Tech, including a new member of that team, Lou Rodriguez, and then the rest of us. And basically, what we talked about is a broad plan for moving forward. Garrett Hamlin of Tetra Tech gave us an outline of what he thought the timing was likely to be, for their work, for our review, for approval by state ed, and then for bidding and commencement of work. And that's all actually attached as exhibits to these minutes. You're welcome to peruse them at your leisure, or if you have any questions, I will struggle to answer them. But basically, their expectation is that they will be moving forward in the next few months with a great deal of industry, and in fact, by now have probably already started doing some some preliminary work with the district office staff. And they will be, there will be representatives of those groups at each of our next couple of facilities committee meetings to keep the committee members abreast of what's happening. At some point in the spring, I believe, can't remember exactly when, they will be bringing us plans for us to review with them, and we will do so. And when we're all in a position where we're comfortable with what they're proposing based on the project scope, then we'll be coming to the full board for a report and approval of that. And the next step after that will be going out to state ed.
Yeah, I think they were estimating about 6 months for the
Until we get to, until
Yeah,
they
yes.
get the plans into state ed, but not 6
Right.
months until they get stuff
Oh,
to
no,
us.
that's correct.
So, that's that.
Steve?
So when we did the outreach to the district and the review of Tetra Tech, one of the things that came up was solar, and that our electricity costs were so much cheaper than, say, Long Island, where it made sense to put the panels up. But in light of Indian Point closing and Tom saying that electricity costs may be higher going forward, has it been readdressed that maybe it makes sense to revisit that?
We haven't. There is a small solar component. It's really a demonstration project that's already in the project. That's probably something that we should talk about at our next meeting. I mean, I recall that part of the reason why Tetra Tech was not recommending doing something larger was because of the reimbursement available from the state. But let's at least talk about it and see if that has changed.
Maybe there's grants and stuff out there. I mean, if the cost is going to change going forward, and we're talking about budget, maybe
And
it's
it
worth
may
looking
be,
at.
it may be that that's something, even if we can't include it as part of the capital project, that we decide to do nevertheless and find another way to fund. Yeah, that's a good thought.
Certainly, we had that. I think it's a good discussion to have in light of the power plant closing.
Oh, just a quick question, Mark.
Yep.
So I did notice that you're going to be tapping the communications committee to get the word out.
Yes.
That, because we're doing a lot of communicating, whatever lead time you can give us on what you're looking for and how often, that would be
I mean,
great.
the kind of communicating I think that we were talking about, it's a while ago, I have to admit, was really more about what people can expect the projects moving forward to do to them in the schools. Since we're not going to be starting construction work until the summer or the late spring of 2018, that's a sort of a long-term project for communications rather than a shorter-term project. But yeah, I mean, I think once the plans are put together and approved, then at that point, we'll have a much better idea of when things are going to take place, when things are likely to take place, and what the order of work's going to be. One of the things that we were discussing in the meeting, and is still largely in flux, I think, is what's going to happen when. We're planning for a project that's going to take place mainly over the summer of 2018 and the summer of 2019. And so, that's going to be an important consideration as to how disruptive and in what manner the disruption is going to take place. That's what we're going to need to be communicating. So all of that we're going to have to back into as we get the more information ourselves. But yes, believe me, you'll get as much information as we have as soon as we have it.
All right, next up is Personnel Committee.
I think those are mine. Hang on, let's see if I can find them. Okay. So we talked, Joe gave us an update about the Super Eval online superintendent evaluation tool that we're going to be using this year. And all of our emails have been uploaded to Super Eval, and Joe is going to be uploading his documents, his portfolio of documents throughout the year.
The goals first. They go in first,
Right,
and then
right.
the docs.
But my little checklist says that that's been completed.
So that would be an error.
Okay. Anyway, we will all have access to the system in the springtime, and I believe that Joe and Mark have met to talk about the timeline. It looks like we will be finishing out by the end of June, but, we'll back things up. It looks like a nice spread of time, so hopefully that will be an effective and wonderful way to perform the evaluation. And then most of the meeting we spent talking about our upcoming negotiations. We need to review the past times ground rules, legal's comments from our meeting with David Shaw, and talk about non-substantive language corrections that have been outlined through our conversations, and then organize our items for bargaining. So I think we're going to start meeting more regularly.
Yeah.
Probably after Joe gets back. That's it.
Yeah. Very good.
Anything else for personnel? Move on to finance. So I did those minutes as well. So this was quite a while ago, as some of these meetings are, so anyway, Tom had given us the latest information regarding the budget, which is considerably outdated now since it was 3 weeks or so ago. There was a foundation increase of approximately $18,000 in the governor's budget. They were still running or analyzing the aid runs at that point. CPI is estimated at 1.26%, which was up from the last board meeting. Prior to that, Tom did not anticipate any changes to the budget based on those figures. We reported on special education savings and some news regarding the health insurance rate increase, which will not go as low as 10%, as we heard earlier tonight. We had a discussion about declining enrollment and possible staffing scenarios. We had a brief update on the cafeteria. There was an inventory that needed to be taken at the end of January, and they were preparing posters to promote the after-school food program. So at our next meeting, we will be discussing fund balance projections, more on the budget, and also the cafeteria report. Questions for finance? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the curriculum committee.
Okay, those are mine. Also seems like a long time ago. We met to review the groups and other members' feedback regarding the middle school computer lab. Marvin drafted a summary feedback document. We went through that and talked about sort of what our goals were with this document so that he could go back to Lori Keating, our consultant. He was still waiting for feedback from John and Steve Jensen, and then he was going to take it back to the group so that they could draft a revised curriculum. We talked a little bit about the ISTE standards, which these are based on, and the balance of the depth of education in each of these 7 domains, and if we were getting the balance right, if we were making the best choices given our full K-12 scope. We also talked a little bit about Marvin's and faculty's impression about our new digital natives. And the fact that they can do lots with technology now. They know how to press all the buttons and get things to happen, but our job is to make their learning durable and develop student intellect, which the internet is not necessarily prone for. So those kinds of conversations need to be embedded in the curriculum so that we know that our kids are actually learning how to use the tools appropriately rather than getting a quick answer from, hey, Google. We moved on to the next generation science standards, which have been approved by the regents, and Marvin is really positive about the new standards, how they were developed, the time that they took to get it right. There won't be any testing on the new standards until the 2019-20 school year. Will probably happen in 5th and 8th grade rather than 4th and 8th grade as it is currently. But Content topics are shifting K-12, so the science teachers are going to be spending the summer reviewing and developing our own aligned curriculum. But he was incredibly excited that science was going to become a subject where you're doing it, not just hearing about it, so it's good stuff. We also asked about the math review, which Brett referenced earlier. The regents have extended the review period on the ELA and math standards, so they are now predicting that testing will happen in the 2019-20 school year, but no word on how that testing is going to roll out. So we're still sort of in a holding pattern about developing the Chancellor math curriculum further. Everyday math is sort of holding its own and kids are getting a complete education, but the math study group that Brett mentioned is eager to get together and start reviewing the changes that are beginning to be talked about and what kinds of programs are out there that they can look to for guidance. We talked a little bit about whether it was better to buy a curriculum off the shelf for math versus having it homegrown, and Marvin pressed the point that, most elementary teachers are generalists. They're not specific math professors. So these curricula that we purchase, like Everyday Math, are written by math professors, and they're aligned with, developmentally appropriate measures. Unfortunately, we didn't get an attachment of last summer's curriculum work, but it's a remarkably lengthy document, and it's really impressive to see what our teachers ask for in terms of curriculum development over the summer, the depth of projects that they work on, and the creative things they come up with. Flipping the classroom, as I recall, was on that list. So teachers are really being encouraged to try new approaches and learn new things, which is really great. Our February agenda is full. We're going to answer any questions related to summer curriculum work, which you guys haven't seen, and we're going to revisit the idea of the kindergarten entry age with Brett. He's going to be invited to come. We're going to talk about the rigor of the K-1 curriculum, which was brought up at one of our breakfasts with the board. Update on the CLS health curriculum, and review potential curriculum work that has a significant budgetary impact.
Questions? Okay. Seeing none?
Actually,
Lisa.
before we move on from committee reports, because I think that was the last one, are we definitely not having the audit committee meeting tomorrow? That's canceled?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thanks.
So we'll move on to the Duchess BOCES board nominations and election.
Yeah, I'll keep this quick. There are 2 open seats on the Duchess BOCES board. Rhinebeck is one of the 8 component districts that can have a member on the BOCES board. So all of you hankering for even more stuff in your life, or know somebody who is, we can nominate somebody. The deadline for nominations is March 9th. This is just an FYI, and I've been asked to bring this to your attention. So I have done my due diligence in this regard.
Joe?
Yes.
Just a thought, because it could be someone in the community who we nominate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
I
yeah.
wonder if it would be possible to make an announcement like that in our newsletter, or the high school newsletter in particular, where parents with kids in both these programs. Someone
Yeah,
might
that's a very good
actually be
thought.
interested in it.
We could even tweet.
I was going to say, we may have missed a deadline for that, because this is kind of a short turnaround. I mean, I'll check with Ed,
March
certainly.
9th. Oh, right. and
We would have to meet and make the nomination before March 9th, but I certainly could tweet it and put it on our website, so I'd be glad to do that. And we could email it out to parents of our 9-12 students as well.
Right.
We'll do that.
All right, so we'll move on to good news. Laura?
I had the pleasure of going to the Take a Stand gallery opening tonight. It's really, really incredibly impressive, what those kids do and what Dee and the artists actually allow them to explore. And if you haven't gone, go. It's really great. It's really, really fun.
Other good news?
Well, I just,
Go ahead.
the Bogota trip was mentioned, but it occurred to me, I just wonder if maybe as they develop like a plan for reporting back to the community, that maybe we want someone to come to our meeting and talk to us about it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd be glad to ask them if it's your pleasure.
Yeah, I think we asked Gideon initially when he came to talk to us if he would come
Yeah.
back too.
I'll just mention that I went to the Harlem Wizards night last week, and it was really a wonderful event. Kids all had a great time, and it was really entertaining also. So great job by our teacher athletes who came within, I think, 4 points of the Wizards at the final score. So they did a great job. Diane.
I just want to mention that our boys basketball team is undefeated.
Excellent, very exciting.
Other good news? Okay, move on to old business.
I have some.
Okay.
Our meetings with our two remaining legislators are full and not so full. Meeting with Senator McCahill on March 10th at 9 a.m., Shulkin, Dalbert, Fleischauer with a question mark, Burns, and Rosenthal. If additional people want to sign on for that, please let me know. We firmed that date up with the assemblyman because there's a pretty good number of us going. Not so the meeting with Assemblyperson Barrett, March 9th, 2 p.m., Dalbert and Shulkin. We could use a couple more. Please let me know if you're able to go. I mean, we could go with Laura and Deirdre and me and Tom, and in fact, we will go as opposed to not see them at all. But if you're available and you can make it, please let me know. Okay, that's all I have for old business. I have a few others, but
Just
I'm sorry.
along that point, Deirdre, when you were reading the communications minutes, we didn't actually talk about the P-TECH program with Sue
No,
Serino.
there's
So if we could
really-
remember to do that, just sort of to mention it.
Well, we can mention it, but I have looked into it, and there's really not too much we can do about it. We could talk about it.
We can, but good day.
Should make them aware of it, but figure out how they're actually doing it out to the 6 years. Is you don't get your high school diploma to get your associate's degree.
They came up with a very clever loophole,
They're just awful people.
because you can go to school until you're 21 if you have not earned your high school diploma. So they withhold the high school diploma till the end of the 6th year, and they award a high school diploma and an associate's degree concurrently. Clever. Very clever. So it is what it is. Also, just one correction on that. It's not Ulster Community College's program. It's Ulster BOCES program.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I mean, the community college is obviously a partner with them, but the grant for it was written by Ulster BOCES, and it is delivered at Kingston High School. That's the site, but just for clarity.
Okay. Another opportunity for public comment? No public comment. All right. Other?
Yes, I have, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, gosh, hands.
No, you go first.
No, I wouldn't think of it.
Oh, okay.
I would defer
Other.
to the members
Do you
of
want
the
to go
board.
first?
I don't know if my hand was up.
Doesn't
but I'll go first. Well, we received some letters from parents about passing a resolution in opposition to the nomination of Betsy DeVos as Education Secretary. As Mark communicated to those letter writers, our meeting tonight was going to be too late for that unfortunate vote. But I guess I thought, and it is late tonight, but I think, discussion about, going forward, a lot of concerns about federal education policy in our community and elsewhere, and that at a minimum, I think that we should be alert to what those policy changes might be, and it would be no surprise to any of you that I support the idea of our school board, communicating to the public our position on various education policies that impact our school district. So I think it's interesting that at a time when we're talking about sustaining dynamic public schools and asking the question, what about public education is important for a community, an education secretary has been chosen who has an ideology that doesn't support really the public nature of education. So, going forward, I just like us to be alert to that.
Laura?
I agree. I wholeheartedly support that. And I'd really like to thank those people who did write to us. It's rare, and I would have loved to have been able to take it up, but weather precluded our
Yes,
conversation.
weather had other plans.
I agree. I think, we probably could have passed a resolution had, we've been able to meet prior to the vote today, but anyway, maybe next time. Any other?
Yes, I have another
Go ahead.
other. So this is my semi-annual reminder that my seat on this board will be open. I'm actually, I guess, keeping it warm for Rick Walker, whose seat it actually was. But that term expires at the end of the school year, and so I will not be running for it. And I strongly encourage anybody in the community who is, excellent, thank you, who is considering public service, and particularly service to the school district, to put in their nominating petition and join this dynamic group of people who want nothing more than to have the best education for their children and for the children of this community as it's possible to give.
You're not
And
allowed
thank
off the
you.
facilities committee.
I'm sorry? I'm not allowed off the facilities committee or policy. Maybe I'll drop by every once in a while and say hi.
Or policy.
No, but seriously,
Many years.
please, you gotta finish the book.
And we gotta finish the book. You can't leave till that's done.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you. That's all I got.
All right. Diane?
I'm wondering, Joe, if you could just take a couple minutes for people that are listening, to just talk a little bit about snow days and delays and a little bit of the mechanics of what goes into that. We see things on social media, or parents mention things, that maybe at 8 o'clock the weather's fine and kids are home on a delay. I just think people don't necessarily understand some of the timing issues
Yeah.
that go into those decisions. So if you could just maybe
You'd like
talk
me to
about
do that here?
Just
we have
some
that
of the
much
issues,
time?
not the whole, not the whole weather tracking and everything.
Joe's up at 3 a.m.
Not the whole that,
driving
but
the
just,
streets.
some of the time,
distilled
some of the timings you have to make these decisions are
Yeah.
not, at 8:30 or
I'll try.
8 o'clock.
So my mantra is we try to make the best decisions we can, given the information that's available to us. The information is sometimes gained via firsthand experience. Sometimes, like this morning, for example, we had to make a decision on delaying or not based on a forecast. It was doing absolutely nothing at 4:15 this morning. I know because I was up. But the forecast called for the stuff to come in 5-ish or thereabouts, and more or less it did come in this morning. was also supposed to be gone by 10 or 11 when the temperatures rose, which they never did. But, I mean, fortunately, road crews had gotten out there and done a reasonably good job. The roads were fine when I was out driving around this morning, which I sometimes do. I mean, 7 to 12 inches of snow on my back deck tells me I could just have to roll over, grab the phone, make the call. I don't have to drive around when there's 12 inches of snow out there, but other times I often, though not always, do get up and drive around. Sometimes my little corner of the world, which doesn't have the best roads, so I figure if their roads are good, it's probably pretty good indication that the rest of the district is. Sometimes schlep all the way into Rhinebeck and back. It depends. But that's all happening around 4:15, 4:30, quarter to 5. I like to make the decision, if I can, by 5. I commiserate with my neighbors, both superintendents and highway department people who are, transportation department people who are doing the same thing, especially districts where we share the same roads that are plowed by the same town road crews, Pine Plains, Hyde Park, Red Hook. So we're calling frequently, checking in. How are your roads? Oh, the roads are great here. I'm out in Milan, they're awful. Again, I can't drive every inch of the district in that amount of time. So I make an educated guess based on the information that I have available. I like to try to make the decision by 5 because I want everybody who needs to know at a reasonable hour. What else should I share?
You make it early possibly for the buses, it takes a certain amount of time.
Well, okay, thank you. So some of our buses, you'll notice, are parked out here at the high school, but the rest of them are parked out at the terminal down south of Poughkeepsie. So they basically, with a normal 8 a.m. start, no delays or anything, those buses need to leave the terminal about 6 a.m. to start picking up kids around 7 a.m. to get them here in time for an 8 a.m. start. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. So that's the lag time. So I definitely want to make the decision before those drivers get in their cars and drive down to that terminal to be ready to warm their buses up and head out of there at 6. So you get an idea of the time frame that I'm working in. And so does that kind of
Yes, I just.
say what you want to
You get lots of questions around these
And I
times.
think there's one other piece. and
Go right
that
ahead.
Is the grounds themselves here.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
it could have been snowing overnight and it stopped, but sometimes our crew needs to get in here to be able to clean it all up
Mm-hmm.
before we can have people come in. So there can be a delay just, even without snow going on, just for the fact that we need to clean up our facilities here, so.
That's true, but
Slips, trips, or falls, but our crew's been very.
I would say, as a shout out to those guys, that I am hard pressed to remember when I delayed because our parking lots were bad. I mean, they do a fantastic job, so it could happen.
It can.
Not frequently,
It
but
depends on the timing of the snow and wind
Yeah.
ends and how soon they can
those
get in here to clean it up.
those guys are great.
I can
Except
tell you they start early and they wake me up.
I bet they're doing their job, Steve. That's what they're supposed to be
attest to
doing. So that's how it works. I get the occasional call from people, occasional, very rare, who are critical of the decision. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback that call, whether it's a delay or a close or an early dismissal. But been there, done that, made the calls in a number of different districts, spent 6 years in Old Forge with 300 inches of snow a year, and managed to get that school district through 6 years of delays and closings or whatever. So certainly not my first rodeo at this stage of my career, but that's pretty much the way it works.
Thank you. We
Thanks for the
appreciate your
opportunity.
early mornings, but just so
Yes.
people know that if it, 8
Yep.
a.m. it looks fine, that this had to be done much earlier.
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes the forecasts don't pan out the way they say, and
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? The other thing is, I make decisions, if I have to err, I err on the side of caution, and if that means I delayed it or closed it when, in retrospect, I wouldn't have had to, it's because something in all that experiential data tells me that this just, it isn't good for kids. And that's it. So the meeting's closed, right? No, we still have more. Other, yes, I'd like to make a modest proposal to the board regarding our calendar, given the several delays of our board meetings and kind of the schedule. So we're meeting here tonight on February 7th. We're scheduled to meet next Tuesday night. And then again on Tuesday night, the 28th. I am going to suggest to you that we not meet next Tuesday, that we meet, oh, you're not going to know if that easy, that we meet on the 21st, and that we not meet on the 28th. So that will space out the board meetings over the next couple of, so I'm suggesting we meet on the 21st and March 7th and March 21st. Now, if you all would like to meet next Tuesday, I'm totally fine with that. Just trying to space it out a little bit, but if you want to meet on the 14th and the 28th, it works for me as well. I'm not sure that we need to meet again a week from tonight.
21st works fine.
Yeah, the 21st.
Obviously, if people aren't available, that would not be a good thing too, so. If you need to check your schedules and throw me an email tomorrow morning, that's fine too. I don't need to know this second, but.
Yeah.
For me.
It is. It's good for me.
Yeah, that's good for me.
Would anybody like to object?
No?
Okay. Tom, you're off the hook next week.
Yeah, you were gonna have to fly solo next week, right?
Yeah. I always
And I get to come up with the agenda.
He's gonna be my guy on the ground for put the agenda together from Nicaragua.
Expect some modifications probably coming the next week when I.
Yeah, there may be some changes. Okay, well, that's all I had, Mark, under other. Thank you very much.
Just changing my calendar.
Yep.
Bear with me 1 minute. Okay. All right, so
I'm sorry,
Laura, go
I
ahead.
have one question. I just was looking, because I couldn't remember when our budget workshop.
Yeah, it's the 11th, I think.
It's
11th
late
March.
March, no, it's further out.
25th.
Further out.
Well,
Okay, we moved
I
it.
I have the darn calendar right
Yeah.
I
here.
think we
25th is
we
It is
moved,
the 11th.
no, didn't we
No,
move
it's
it
not.
from
It's
there?
been moved.
It's the
been moved.
25th.
We must have moved it after this went
We
to the
moved
printer
it,
then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the 25th.
Well,
Yeah.
that works. Okay.
Okay, and we're still comfortable with that meeting with our administrators, not until the 25th, in order to talk about all these moving parts we were angsting over earlier? Is that okay?
You tell me.
Well,
It's a question.
What's that? To a regular board meeting?
Board meeting to discuss those things. We've done it in the past.
Well, you know what, let me make a suggestion. Let's just leave our calendar, in terms of that, let's leave it the way it is. We can always change it. We'll be meeting with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna have to come
Yeah.
to you before the 25th with the RI.
Oh, yeah,
Well, yeah, that's-
So
yeah, we
we're
definitely
definitely gonna have discussions with
think-
you and the principals before that.
And that actually might not work out that badly, because if we bring that information to you, which would involve a plan for how do we close this gap, that gives us some time to discuss it before the 25th and have that public meeting and maybe be in a position to make some decisions then leading up to the adoption date, which is a few weeks later. So I said, let's leave it where it is. We can always shift it. I mean, it's a great question.
And I think we moved it because we wanted to make sure all the numbers were in person. You don't
I
want
think
to
we
have that
did, yeah.
conversation,
Right. Yeah.
that, you know, if you don't need to.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, just, again, not to pick a bone with anybody, but the way it worked out last year, the factor was getting that gap elimination aid at the 11th hour. I mean, there was no guarantee that that was gonna be part of the deal. So we had a plan, assuming that wasn't gonna happen. Then when it happened, it was like, okay, no reason to cut all this stuff if they just handed us this sum of money. Granted, that's not gonna be the case this year, but it was last year, so. Okay.
All right, so we'll move on to the action items. Is there anyone who'd like to remove an item from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the selection of Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, Anchor Books, 1994, as a textbook for the Rhinebeck High School 10th grade English Language Arts curriculum.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of additional enrichment program advisors for Chancellor Livingston Elementary School for the 2015-16 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Wait, 15, 16?
Oh, 6.
Sorry about that.
16,
16,
16, 17.
Okay.
Good catch.
The revised motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute non-instructional staff for the 2016-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional mentors for the 2016-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Katie Torres to commence on or about May 24th, 2017, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid child care leave through the conclusion of the 2016-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Jill Simmons to commence on or about June 10th, 2017, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid child care leave through the conclusion of the 2016-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Cheryl LaCours, teaching assistant for the purpose of retirement, as stated, effective the close of business on June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an additional extension of the appointment of Deborah Verity as long-term substitute in the position of elementary teacher at the Chancellor Livingston Elementary School at the pleasure of the board from the original period of January 4th through June 23rd, 2016, then extended through December 23rd, 2016 at the salary of Step 10 Masters, $76,540 prorated in accordance with the 2016-17 RTA salary schedule, to be further extended through June 23rd, 2017 in anticipation of and contingent upon the receipt of a request from Shannon Denise for a medical leave of absence through the end of the 2016-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act of Danielle Christensen Hicks to commence on or about May 8th, 2017, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid child care leave through October 10th, 2017, or thereabouts.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Fern Locks to commence on December 14th, 2016, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing, through the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid medical leave through January 18th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Lisa Hackett to commence on December 19th, 2016, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing, to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid medical leave through February 21st, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve overnight trip chaperones.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the award of a $100 Flag House gift certificate to the CLS Physical Education Department as a result of successful participation in the fall 2016 New York State AHPERD Physical Education Gets in New York Moving Week program.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous.
Can't wait.
May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a medical leave request from Shannon Denise to commence on January 13th, 2017, with such paid leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing, to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid medical leave through June 23rd, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Carol Leipschutz, Bulkley Middle School English Language Arts teacher, for the purpose of retirement as stated, effective the close of business on June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Jeffrey Levinson, Rhinebeck High School school counselor, for the purpose of retirement as stated, effective the close of business on June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Vicki Honer, Chancellor Livingston Elementary School special education teacher, for the purpose of retirement as stated, effective the close of business on June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Last page. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to adopt the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts such letter of agreement for the architectural services of Tetra Tech Architects and Engineers at $825,000 for the $12,089,160 capital project approved by our voters on December 6, 2016, and authorizes the board president to execute the document in connection with this project.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a medical leave request from Claire Dwyer to commence on May 9th, 2017, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing, to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid medical leave through June 23rd, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional spring coaches for the 2016-17 school year. Crew, girls, boys novice, Casey Hetty, $3,136.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Joe?
I just want to bring to the board's attention that I received yesterday a mini grant application approved by the Rhinebeck Science Foundation in the amount of $100 in support of the Red Hook Rhinebeck Science Fair, and I did not put it on your agenda because it came in so late. If it pleased the board and somebody wants to act on it, I'm okay with that. Otherwise, it can wait until our meeting in 2 weeks.
I'd like to move that we accept $100 grant from the Rhinebeck Science Foundation to support the
Red Hook Run.
The science fair.
Science fair.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes.
I can put that on the agenda. It's easy.
And we thank the,
And
Yes.
many thanks to the Rhinebeck Science
Yep.
Foundation. Do we have executive session?
The only thing I would have for executive session is if the board wants to discuss that letter that I put in your packet regarding a residency issue.
Is it quick?
I don't need to discuss it, but if you want to discuss it with me, then that would be an
Could
item.
it wait till next time?
Yeah, maybe resolved by then for all I know, but yeah, I mean, it's just for your information.
I don't
If
feel
you
like we need to
need to discuss it, fine, otherwise it can wait or let it go. I mean, I'm dealing with it, so.
okay, so no.
Okay, so may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes.